Welcome to Big Bets on Campus Live. It's Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Mike Calabrese and Greg Wadell. This is March. Welcome to March, the best betting month on the calendar. We will start things off with a full Saturday slate. Conference tournaments get started tomorrow, and then it's non-stop action all the way through the first week of April with the national championship. A lot to get to today. We will give out two best bets each. We'll throw out some underdog moneyline looks, and we will talk the marquee matchup of the day between Alabama and Tennessee. Before we get into our first best bets, Greg, Michigan did it again. How long is this going to last?
I mean, at this point, it may never end. I don't know what's going on with this team. It feels like one of the luckiest month and a half long stretches I've ever seen, let alone for a team that I root for. Can't apologize for it. I mean, at this point, after all the close game, ugly stuff that the Juwan Howard era brought for 3 years, I'm just soaking it all in, Stock. But how do you feel? We were both on Illinois for Sunday. We kind of circle this like Rutgers can't pull this off first.
Yeah, I was glad
Do
that shot went.
I was gonna say, do we feel good now that they hit the buzzer beater? We're fine.
Yeah, we'll see where the line comes out, but yeah, I do think Illinois wins on Sunday, but I've certainly been wrong on the Illini before, but I think it's a pretty good matchup. And yeah, Michigan has some warts right now that they're covering up with some close wins. I mean, every win is by two, three, four, and they're getting pretty fortunate at the end of games. Both teams haven't shot it well in a while, but nobody can miss against Illinois. There's probably some aggression coming on that front. So, yeah, I'll be looking to back the Illini on Sunday. Pretty good Big Ten slate on Sunday. I think we got Wisconsin, Michigan State too. And then, as I mentioned before, we have the start of conference tournaments Sunday with the kickoff of the Atlantic Sun. Cannot wait for conference tournaments. All right, let's get into our first best bets. Calabrese, I'll throw it to you to kick things off. What do you got?
I like Iowa State in a revenge spot against Arizona. If you remember that game against the Wildcats at the McHale Center, basically everything went right for Arizona. They made 10 triples, they scored 17 fast break points, they won the turnover battle by two, and they snagged 10 offensive rebounds. Oh, and by the way, they needed to throw in a three-quarter court heave at the buzzer in regulation to push it to overtime. So, with everything going right, then you look at the Wildcats taking their show on the road, and this is one of the glaring alarm bells that goes off, which is they shoot 27% from three on the road, which is 350th in the entire country, which means they're going to have to bring the fight to the Cyclones in the half court. The Cyclones are a top 30 half court defense. They're going to have to score at the rim. I think they're going to struggle at times. And then when you zoom out and you look at personnel for Coach Otts, when he's had a full deck, when he's had Gilbert and Jones off the bench being the six man really of the year in college basketball, and Momcilovic helping them space and knock down threes. When they've had that full deck, they've lost one game the entire season, and it was to Auburn at the buzzer in the Maui Invitational. So I think they are just worlds better than this Arizona team if Gilbert plays. Now, it's alleged that he's still a game time decision, but I go by practice reps. He's practiced the last 3 days. He's been a part of their shoot arounds. That muscle strain, I think it's going to be enough for him to give it a go. And Curtis Jones already had his first game off of walking pneumonia. He looked like a shell of himself, but I think he'll be closer to 100%. That's at least coming from Coach Otts and what he said in the media availability leading up to this. So with Iowa State at nearly full strength, I think they're going to be able to cover this number against Arizona. I think they'll win by closer to 10. So it being below two possessions, that's enough for me to go ahead and lay the points.
Yeah, and you mentioned 3-point shooting. Iowa State really doesn't miss at home, and Arizona has held teams on the road to I think 30% 3-point shooting on super high volume. Not sure that can really last, so wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State has a big game from beyond the arc. I like the clones here as well. Greg, where you headed for your first best bet?
I'm going to go to Florida against Texas A&M here, and one of the teams that I've gone to repeatedly this season in a certain spot has been Florida off of a loss, and it has been one of the best spots to try and find repeatedly whenever you get the chance. They've only lost 3 games, 4 games now, but before this, 3 games where they responded off a loss. They're 3-0 against the spread in those games. Average wins by 22 points. That 30-point win over Tennessee at home came off a loss. They beat Texas by 24, beat Vanderbilt by 11. They're just really good when you have their full attention. And right now, not only does A&M have their full attention, but Florida's playing for something bigger. They're playing for that fourth 1 seed. They can't drop a game at home here if they really want to end up on the 1 line. A&M's been reeling. I mean, we know what A&M is. They're a very physical team that dominates the boards, and if they do hit some shots from outside, they're very dangerous. If they go completely cold, anybody can get them. Well, they've lost 3 straight games, and I just think this is a nightmare matchup because we've seen Florida hold up well on the boards, if not dominate the boards against teams that are very good on the boards and are very physical, like Auburn and Tennessee this year. I think you're going to get Florida's full attention with a fully healthy front court finally, with Handlogton back in the mix off the bench as well. And I'll take Florida to win this one by double figures.
All right, I'm going to stay in the SEC, and I'm going to go with South Carolina at home against Arkansas. I know Arkansas needs this game, but all the pressure's on them. South Carolina can play loose here. And we've seen South Carolina be very, very feisty at home. Since January 1st, it's a top 50 team at home. They're closer to 200th on the road. They just get absolutely slaughtered on the road, come home, and they really should have 3 or 4 wins against teams that are better than this shorthanded Arkansas team that's not at full strength. And that could be a problem today. No Thero, I think, really does hurt. They lost Fland. I think they were a little better without him, but Big Z's was dealing with back spasms. They went to overtime, and South Carolina draws fouls as well as anyone. So Arkansas could get into foul trouble here and be super thin. I think South Carolina can work through the post, go to Murray Boyles. I think they can own the glass in this particular matchup. The one thing I do worry about is turnovers. They have to limit those. But I mentioned 3-point shooting previously in the show. You want to talk about some looming regression for South Carolina. South Carolina is not a good shooting team by any stretch, and they're not a great perimeter defense. But since February 1st, they're shooting 27% from three. Teams against them are shooting 46%. It's the worst in the nation. They're not that bad. That gap is not going to last. And then Arkansas, on the other hand, teams are shooting just 30% against them since February 1st, and they're shooting 37.5%. This is not a great shooting team. They needed to shoot over 50% to beat Texas in overtime. I think South Carolina picks them off. We've seen South Carolina, like they lost by 1 at the buzzer to Florida. They, arguably should have beat Mississippi State. We saw them recently beat Texas. They're a much better team at home. I think they pick off the Hogs here. So give me the Cox at home. Before we get to our marquee matchup of the day, if you want access to all of Action's pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code BBOC20 at sign up. One more time, that's BBOC20 at sign up for $20 off. Also, another plug, Elite Eight Saturday. We'll have an event in Chicago. Myself, Jim Root from the Three Man Weave. I think the guys from the Three Man Weave are going to be there as well. But Jim and myself will be previewing the Elite Eight games. We'll have some drinks, watch the games. So make sure you check out. I'll retweet. I've already tweeted it a bunch, but I'll tweet that link out again. Joe's on Weed Street. We have that rented out for both of the games. So I hope to see all of my Chicago area peeps there. All right, let's get into the marquee matchup of the day. We're going to stay in SEC country, and we're going to head to Knoxville, where Tennessee will host Alabama. Tennessee, I think, is sitting around a 3.5-point favorite here. Calabrese, what are you looking at?
I like the Vols on the money line and under 158.5. I think it's a correlated outcome. And let's start with the fact that in SEC play, Tennessee has cashed the under 9 out of their 15 games, coming in the closing total by 7.3 points per game. No other major program in conference play this year has cashed unders by a larger margin on average than the Vols. And the big reason for that is their defense and their pace. And what a differential there is in this game. Alabama first in pace in the entire country, Tennessee 346th. So if they are able to impose their will in terms of slowing this game down, I see a value in terms of instead of giving away 3, 4 points, I would prefer to go on the money line and parlay it up with this under. And then on the offensive end, you need something, to be able to hang your hat on the ball side. And Lanier has come out of his shell. In 3 of his last games, he's blown up, including a 30-point breakout game against A&M on the road. He's found his confidence and his stroke from 3-point range. And also Alabama, I think when you get into the weeds a little bit and you look at some of their splits home and away, they can get bullied on the glass, particularly on the road. I expect 10 to 15 offensive rips for Tennessee in this game. I think that'll stabilize them a little bit if their threes aren't necessarily falling early. So for those reasons, I like this parlay.
Greg, you're on board with the side here with Mike, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to take Tennessee to cover the 3.5, but I agree with everything that Mike just said here. Tennessee's been awesome at home. They beat some great teams, wins over Florida, Missouri there. They've only lost one game at home all year, and the recipe is to just go nuclear from 3 to beat this team in this building. And look, Alabama can certainly do that. They shot 49% from 3 last game, but if you're playing the shooting variation, try and nail down what Alabama's going to shoot. Good luck. It's always good to fade them when they're coming off a really hot shooting game, in my opinion. And just to note, Rick Barnes won 3 straight against Nate Oates. He swept Alabama last year. Both these programs have been really good the last couple seasons, but Barnes has sort of had the upper hand here. And I just trust Tennessee significantly more at home, trust Alabama significantly less on the road. I think the numbers back that up. The Alabama defense, 9th in adjusted defensive efficiency in their own building, 106th on the road this year. You just get a different version of the Tide defensively on the road. I like Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm on board with you guys as well with the Vols. I think they match up well defensively with the Alabama offense, and I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama comes back to earth here from 3. I think they're shooting 42% from 3 over their past 5 games on super high volume. And Tennessee also has the number 1 2-point defense in the country. And on the other side of the ball, Greg, you just alluded to it. I don't really trust this Alabama defense on the road, so I think Tennessee gets it done at home. All right, let's shift gears here and take a look at some potential Moneyline underdogs for today, whether you want to sprinkle a little bit, build a round robin, parlay them, whatever you want to do. Let's take a look at 3 here. We'll each give one. Calabrese, I'll start with you. Where are you going?
I'll go with a short dog, Utah State, plus 115, 120 against Colorado State. The Rams simply have been overmatched when they played up against competition. They were swept by the Lobos. They lost by 8 to this Utah State team despite a monster game from Nick Clifford, and they lost handily to VCU and Ole Miss. So when you look at any opportunity to score a win over a Ken Pom top 100 team, they've come up short. Colorado State also, they don't get on the offensive boards. They don't turn you over. So they're very reliant on making jumpers. And this Utah State team, also, it needs to be pointed out, it's difficult to run away from them. At the very least, this is going to be kind of a back and forth game because Utah State gives up the fewest kill shot runs in the Mountain West, 3rd least in the entire country. So you really have to earn it, and it's difficult to get them, into a cold streak on the defensive end. Utah State, meanwhile, I think they're also going to turn over this Rams team a lot. In their win, where they won by 8 in Logan, they were +5 in the turnover margin, and they could have won by double digits. They missed 13 foul shots in that game, so I think that's hiding some value for them. And finally, a bounce back spot for Ian Martinez. He's coming off one of his worst games of 2025. He gets the line a ton, and how about this first stat? He's made 38 straight foul shots. So I think he's basically a lock to go for 5 or 6 foul shots, if not closer to 10. And when he gets to the charity stripe, he knocks him down. So I like the Aggies here a little bit of value on the money line against the Rams on the road.
Mountain West. Mike, where you headed, Greg?
I'm going to go to the latest game on the slate today, and I'm going to take San Francisco over Gonzaga at home. It's plus 330. Point blank, we haven't talked too much Zags lately on this program, but I don't really believe in this team at all. I don't believe that Mark Few knows what personnel he trusts on this team. That was evident when he had to go to Diogny last game for really the first time all season, and everybody's gassing it up. He looked great. Maybe he gives them some rim protection that the team's been sorely missing, but I'll kind of go the other way on that. I don't think it's a good thing that you have to break glass in case of emergency the second to last game of the regular season to find the guy that's going to solve some of your issues. And I'm not quite positive you will even go back to him the way that people think that he seems to be planning to. San Francisco 16-0 in this building this season, 4-0 versus Ken Palm top 100 teams. They beat St. Mary's, they beat Boise in this building. And they played once this year already. Gonzaga got the better of them, but you look at what happened in that game. Marcus Williams stunk. He was 2 for 12 from the floor. That was still within striking distance with really his worst performance of the season. He's been sensational for large stretches of the year. If you can get a good Marcus Williams game tonight, I just think there's some good value here against a Gonzaga team. Going back all the way to the beginning of December, 3-7 versus Ken Palm top 100 opponents. I mean, they have repeatedly had some stinkers against good teams. I think this is going to be a juiced up building, and plus 330 is worth a shot.
I thought about getting, yeah, that should be a good one. I mean, it's for the double, it's for the bye all the way to the semis. It'd be crazy if Gonzaga actually doesn't have it for the first time, and I don't even know how long. And obviously, super important game for both teams' tournament resumes. So excited to watch that one. And yeah, San Francisco, the Dons have been a different team at home. One thing I worry about with them is their 3-point defense they've been running like gods. I mean, I think teams are shooting 22% since January 1st from three against them, and opponents shot 17% from three against them in the month of February. So I just hope that all that doesn't come crashing down, but don't hate the look. I was thinking about getting a little crazy with VMI, just a high variance team to shoot a ton of threes. VMI's already locked into who they're going to play in the conference tournament, but so is Chattanooga. They already wrapped up the outright regular season title. So that game could get weird, but I'll go with Kentucky. I'll throw my cats out there. They don't miss from three at home. You just hope they go nuclear. Auburn's defense hasn't been as good away from home. Right? They don't really force a ton of turnovers. They're not great on the defensive glass. They do a tremendous job of limiting threes, but Kentucky's going to get their shots off, and they really don't miss at home. So bet on Pope and just some 3-point variance here with Kentucky. By the way, that pays out, I think, close to like 26-1. We'll drop a quick slip in the chat right now for you if you want to follow along. Drinks on me and at Stagger In tonight if it does hit. All right, before we get out of here, one final best bet. Calabrese, you are headed out west again.
I am a Beaver believer. I am on Oregon State in this spot, it's up now to 12.5. Senior night for St. Mary's, but St. Mary's, the hay's already in the barn. They clinched the WCC regular season title. They got the #1 seed in the upcoming tournament. And this is Wayne Tinkle we're talking about. He is a phenomenal tactician in terms of preparation. He's going to fold in zone about 20% of the time. And that was enough to hold St. Mary's to 63 points in their first meeting. Now, they couldn't throw it in the ocean in that game, and they only scored 49 themselves. But I think it's very likely that they're going to be able to hold the Gales in the 60s again. And then it's a question of, can Michael Calabrese have a bounce back? Because he's been a breakout star for them the entire season. He had his worst game of the year in the first meeting. He only had 3 points in that 14-point loss, to the Gales. So I still think this is a good matchup in terms of what they're going to be able to do defensively. St. Mary's is going to slow things down on their own. You don't need to impose your will and play at a slower pace from that regard. So I still think this is a good team with Oregon State. They're at 20 wins. They're still hungry. They're coming off a gut-wrenching loss to San Francisco on Thursday. So they've certainly played up at times to the better teams out west. I think they'll do it again here and hang around and lose by single digits. So I'm happy to take any number north of 11.
Greg, where are you going for your final best bet?
I gave a play for the latest game of the day. I'll give a play for the earliest game of the day. I like Maryland to cover at Penn State here. Motivationally, the Terps coming off that heart-wrenching Michigan State loss, a game in which Maryland shot 4 for 20 from three and still had the final look to win that game. This is a good basketball team that still has a lot to play for. They want to get that protected top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They're right on the cut line right now. On the flip side, Penn State has locked up the fact that they will not be competing in the Big Ten tournament. Their season's over. They could win their final 2 games, and they're still not going to get there. So I don't know what version of Penn State we see. I think we see a pretty defeated team after the way they lost that Indiana game, whereas you get Maryland's full motivation here. And matchup-wise, I like it a lot for Maryland. They should dominate inside against the 228th ranked 2-point defense. Queen and Reese were pretty awful against Michigan State collectively, so I would expect their best. And really, Penn State, a one-trick pony defensively. They've got to force turnovers, but Maryland's very good at taking care of the ball. 38th nationally at avoiding turnovers on the offensive end. I like the Terps to roll here.
So Penn State is eliminated officially. I haven't done my Big Ten tiebreakers.
Yeah, Penn State can get to 7 wins, which they would need a lot of help to backdoor if they win their last 2.
Yep. The only thing I worry about with Maryland here is, like, do they just come out? Penn State could be flat too after that loss, but does Maryland just come out like a zombie? It's a noon start. It'll be like a morgue in that building, and they're coming off that ridiculous loss to Michigan State. So are they just a little lethargic and dazed early? That's my only concern. Do you have any concern there?
I honestly expect the best from at least the backcourt. You can tell me Derek Queen's a guy that comes out lethargic and needs 15 minutes to get going, and I would buy that. To me, a lethargic version of Maryland can still cover 5.5 here against a team I think is going to be zombies themselves. But as long as Gillespie shows up, I think they should be fine.
All right, my final best bet. I'm going to go with Cincinnati against Houston. I think it's a decent spot to fade Houston. Maybe they come out a little flat. They had 2 big wins last weekend. You got Kansas coming in on Monday. You're playing Cincinnati at home. You've already clinched everything in the Big 12. Also, Houston, while one of the best teams in the country, they've definitely, from a metrics perspective, they definitely benefited from teams having injuries, guys getting thrown out. I mean, just last week they played Iowa State and Texas Tech. Both teams had 2 starters out. And Cincinnati has found its offense of late. Over the past 7 games, they're a top 15 offense per Torvik. They're shooting the ball confidently. They got Lukosius back the other night, whose shooting prowess should help. And they don't really turn the ball over. They have multiple ball handlers at the top. That's huge against Houston. I do worry about Houston just crushing them on the offensive glass, and Houston is comfortable in the mid-range. But since he does a great job of taking away the 3, and Houston, I mean, they're an elite shooting team, but they're like shooting 43% over the past month. So maybe there's a bit of regression there. But I just think this game will be a half-court grinder. Neither defense gives up anything in transition. Since he doesn't turn the ball over, just too many points here for a Cincy team that's playing much, much better. They're 5-2 over their past 7 games. They lost 1 game by 3 at West Virginia. They were a bit shorthanded, couldn't really make a shot. And then at Iowa State, I mean, they were in that game pretty much the whole way and got a horrendous whistle. This is a different team because of their offensive confidence. I think they can keep this within 2 touchdowns here on the road. So give me the Bearcats. That'll do it for us today on the show, but we have so much content coming on the Big Bets on Campus podcast. It'll start tomorrow. The 3-Man Weave will have their normal episode, but they'll preview the 3 conference tournaments that start early next week. I'll be doing an episode on Monday with Jim. We'll do 4 more conference tournaments that start midweek. We'll have another episode on Thursday, and then so on and so on. I think we'll have 9 or 10 episodes covering the next 31 or 30. We already did the Atlantic Sun on Thursday's episode. So the next 30 conference tournaments to start over the next 9 days. There will be episodes covering every single one of those. So make sure you check those out. Big Bets on Campus, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can follow along with everything on the award-winning Action Network app. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Greg and Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Gifford, on the back end. Most importantly, again, thanks to all of you for tuning in. It's March. Enjoy all the action. Good luck on all of your wagers. We'll see you next week. Cheers.